Christchurch, New Zealand. What is good? Make some noise, everybody. Oh, it is a delight to be here down under. In the other down under, I was previously in Australia. Do you guys hate Australia? Is there a rivalry? Is that a thing? Yeah, it feels like one of those, it feels like you two are brothers or siblings where it's like, yeah, we don't like each other, but nobody else can make fun of them because they're my brother. Okay, cool. We have been here for not a very long amount of time. We were in Australia for a couple of weeks, came down here. It has been absolutely lovely. We had all of our things checked at the airport where they were like, there's no soil on your boots, right? You didn't bring in an apple? There's no honey or nuts in your bag yet? So we're good. We're not committing any, food-based crimes by importing unwanted things. Everybody okay? Cool? Great? Sweet? Awesome. But it's been a delight. Just been here in Christchurch for a couple of days. I've had all of my meals at Riverside Market. I don't think I'm ever going to leave. It's great. They have everything you need. But I'm very excited to be here. Everyone has been such a delight. Everyone so far in this entire country is excessively nice, which is very cool. But the person who's going to be joining me on stage today is someone who is infinitely more excited to be here than me. And I'm already very excited, but Kelly is the most obsessive Lord of the Rings fan that I know. So to be here is very special. So let's not waste any more time. Please give a warm welcome to our guest for this episode. It's Kelly Beckham and Schubert. Kelly, come to the stage. Oh, hello. What an entrance.
I've been planning that since we got here.
How's it going?
Good. There you go.
Thank you. Great. While you tell them how you're enjoying it, I'll fix my hair.
Oh, we're loving it here. We've been here. We've only been in New Zealand for like 2 days, and we spent a lot of that time, unfortunately for me, working. But I'm officially on PTO now and living it up in New Zealand. We're very excited.
And I'm on the clock because this is my job. But it's been a delight. We spent a good chunk of today planning the rest of our New Zealand travels, which is going to be very fun and very hiking based. And we've already booked an additional Lord of the Rings tour in addition to the one we already had booked. So
look, when I'm in charge, when I'm the one in charge of the planning, I'm going to find it. So
it is funny when we do like particular hikes and then I'm looking at them on Google Maps and then you zoom in a little bit and then something on Google Maps is like, oh, this is the Isengard Lookout Tower. It's like, is that why? But when Kelly sends me the link, it's like, here's this cool trailhead not called Lord of the Rings. I'll be like, wait a second. Anyway, we're not here to discuss Lord of the Rings. We're here to discuss. We are not here to discuss Lord of the Rings. We are here to discuss Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And we are specifically going to be covering Chapter 5 and as much of Chapter 6 as we can get through of Book 4, Battle of the Labyrinth. Things are getting intense because now we're inside the titular labyrinth. I've now asked you, I think, every introductory question I can think of since you've been the guest for the past, 6 live shows / episodes. So,
what's a good introductory question this time?
Have you ever done a corn maze or anything like a labyrinth? Are you a big maze person?
You don't know how many times I tried to book a maze on this trip.
Really?
Yeah, there've been a couple. There was one in Australia that I tried to get us to go to. We ran out of time. There's one here that I was going to try and get us to go to, but I think we're going to run out of time. I keep trying to build mazes into our trip. I've been to one before.
Okay.
Did
you complete the maze?
The hedges were at knee height, so it was a little easy. But it was actually larger than expected, so it took us a while to get through, even though we could see the way there. It took us a while.
Where was this? What part of town was this in?
This was in a gardens outside of some chateau in France. I don't think it was meant to be a hedge maze for people like me. I think it was meant to be a scenic garden, but there was a hedge maze in somebody's garden.
I think you might have got, maybe it's a common staple at French chateaus, but when I lived in Paris, I also went to one of those, and they had a little dinky maze.
Was it in the Loire Valley?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that was the same one that I went to.
Oh, look at us! We did the same maze.
Did
just
you
at
do the maze?
Times. I mean, yeah, but it's very easy.
Yeah,
it's like someone's backyard. It is not challenging at all. And I'm pretty sure I made, because Vine was alive at the time, I'm pretty sure I made a goofy Cedric Diggory themed Vine while I was going through the maze. But that's the second act of the show, so we gotta not worry about Harry Potter stuff. For now, Percy Jackson. We are here. It is Chapter 5, which is called Nico Buys Happy Meals for the Dead. Now, I always try to guess what happens with these chapter titles. This one threw me for a loop. I had no idea what this could be. Here was my guess, and I mean, I could have been more wrong. Let's say that. I said, quote, I'm going to guess we get another collect call iris message because I doubt they get to the underworld in this chapter. Either that or a dream. As far as the Happy Meals, maybe Nico like courts spirits with meals and gifts, question mark? So like, when I wrote that, I was like, this can't be right at all. And in retrospect, not the worst. Not the worst.
Not that far off.
No,
as we'll
not
see.
that far off. Were you a big Happy Meal fiend back in the day?
Oh, yeah. We loved Happy Meals. Were Happy Meals here, too? Imagine.
Do you call them like a fun, different name, though?
Ooh.
Okay, they're just Happy Meals.
Happy
Do you
Meals.
guys call McDonald's Macca's, or is that just Australia?
Macca's.
Macca's as well? Okay, cool.
Yeah. When they, at least in the U.S., when we were little, they had the tiny versions of the Beanie Babies that came as the toy.
Yeah.
That was our biggest Happy Meal era because we had to collect all of the tiny Beanie Babies.
Of course.
In fact, I found an email, or my mom found an email from like 1997 or something, where I had used her email to email my grandparents, begging them to go to McDonald's and get us more tiny Beanie Babies.
It's a very good email that I did
It was
convince
very
you to
good.
turn into a tweet at one point. So maybe in Intermission we can find it and you can verbatim read your tweet. But I'm pretty sure it was like, Grandma, urgent, please get the tiny beanies. And there were cute little typos.
Yep.
Love Kelly at, soccergirl13 at AOL.com or whatever. So narrator Percy begins this chapter by saying, quote, at least I got a good night's sleep before the quest, right? Wrong, because as you will recall, we've left our heroes where they've decided they're going to go on the quest. They've decided that all 4 of our friends are going on the quest, which is a scary thing to not have the official normal 3. So,
But we get the full team together.
We do get the full team
which
together.
we've kind of been waiting for.
We have been waiting for that. I'm very excited. So, of course, by narrator Percy saying he didn't get a good night's sleep, that can only mean one thing, dream. And that can only mean one thing, scary stuff is about to happen. So Percy is in the stateroom of the Princess Andromeda, and Luke kneels on a Persian rug before the golden Kronos sarcophagus. And Luke is wearing a white chiton and a himation, which is a cape. No one's Greek in the crowd. But he's wearing that. His hair looks white in the moonlight, and Percy says that he kind of looks like a minor god with this fancy sort of get-up. And he honestly looks too healthy given that when we last saw Luke, he fell off of a mountain. So he looks a little healthy for what Percy would anticipate. Now Luke then says, quote, our spies report success, my lord. Camp Half-Blood is sending a quest, as you predicted. Our side of the bargain is almost complete. And I was very worried here because I want to know who are the spies. And is everything a trap? Should we cancel the quest? I was very nervous for our friends.
Who do you think the spies are?
We'll have to see as it kind of continues in the chapter. But as I said in a previous episode, I don't feel like I can trust Juniper. We just met her. I don't know what she's doing here. She's all like weird with Grover. I don't know. The 2 people jumping out to me right now are Juniper and Quintus. And in this chapter, they go a little too heavy to be like, I don't know if we should trust Quintus, guys. And that just feels like they're pushing that narrative a bit too hard. And I've been burned before. But also, when I did do the Ludo Bagman thing, this is exactly what it was. So we'll have to see. So Kronos, in response to Luke, says, quote, excellent. Once we have the means to navigate, I will lead the vanguard through myself. And I was worried that he might come back in this book. It's been hinted at since book 2 that he's coming back. Even book 1, really. I mean, it's the 4th out of 5 in the main series, so it's not impossible that he would come back, but it's just always one of those daunting things of like, oh, right, that might happen. So Luke cautions that it may be too soon for Kronos to return, and he suggests that Krios or Hyperion lead it instead. Now, this brings up 2 points. 1, I got to talk to Dr. Moya because I have no idea what Krios or Hyperion do. But 2, I do find it funny that the books are published by Disney Hyperion. And I feel like that wasn't always the case. I don't know the exact timeline, but I feel like it was under one publishing company, and then I think Disney bought it, but I'm not exactly sure when that happened. But I want to know the timeline of, was Hyperion in the story before Hyperion came in, or did they like buy the rights to the books and were like, hello, Uncle Rick, if you could find a way to sneak our name in. I don't think that's the case, though.
Like a really obvious ad in some movie or TV show. Like, we're going to pay for this with our Visa.
Okay, you're saying that because you did just watch the,
what was I just? Oh,
the
yeah.
Zac Efron Down to Earth thing. He
Yeah.
has a season about it where he goes to Australia, and it's got one of those like subtle product placement things. But at one point they're like on a pontoon doing Great Barrier Reef stuff, and then for some reason, even though this is a TV show that they are clearly filming, one of the guys on the trip has to buy something from the store on the pontoon.
He buys souvenirs. Yeah.
He
goes to buy some souvenirs and he just like takes out his Visa and is like,
but he very much, the camera's behind him, so he's just like, tap to pay. And it doesn't even look like a real credit card because Visa is way bigger than it should be on the card. It's like, Visa! it's quite ridiculous.
Or like when they zoom in on like the car symbol on the front before they zoom out to the rest of the car. That's a classic too.
Yeah. The big tell that you can always see as way too obvious is when someone uses Bing Maps in a movie.
Oh, yeah.
No way. We get it. Microsoft is sponsoring the movie. But I don't know a single person that would be like, hey, let's Bing this real quick. Good idea, Chad. Ridiculous. So Kronos insists that he will do it. And he says that one more heart will join their cause. And I just wrote, please not Nico, please not Nico, please not Nico. And that will be enough. And soon, Kronos says that he will finally rise from Tartarus. Luke is nervous about the form, in quotes, or at least I have it here, the form. Kronos asks Luke to show him his sword, and then he refers to Luke by first and last name, so Luke Castellan, and I knew that was his last name, but I don't know if that was ever actually said in the book, because Percy, as the narrator, says that he realizes this is the first time he has heard Luke's last name, and I think I only knew it because of tweets about like the casting of the TV show and stuff. I don't know if Castellan or whatever translates to something, or if it's a meaningful last name. The only thing I do know is there is a baseball player named Nick Castellanos, I believe. Is that let me make sure I'm not incorrect. Do you have anything to say about this last name while I Google this?
I can't say what I have to say about this, I think.
Okay. I am confirmed, so I will. Don't worry, I'll edit all that out. This is why you come to the live show, folks. The extra stuff. The only thing I do know about the last name Castellan is that there's a baseball player named Nick Castellanos. Do you guys even know about baseball? Is that a thing down here? Do you guys play? Not at all. Okay, cool. So it's this sport like cricket, right? But there's a baseball player named Nick Castellanos who has this unfortunate / fortunate for him in terms of baseball thing where he hits home runs during really awkwardly dramatic times. So there was one time when he was playing for the Cincinnati Reds where earlier in that game, a baseball broadcaster, they had his microphone on and he didn't know it, and he made a homophobic slur on microphone before the game started, and then he had to apologize for it later in the game. While this guy is mid-apology, Nick Castellanos hits a home run. So this guy is saying this whole thing about like, I pride myself as a man of faith, which is the worst excuse ever always. This is not who I am, blah, blah, blah. And Castellanos, and there goes one deep into left field, Nick. Like it's so just Google Nick Castellanos deep to left field. It will show up. It's very, very funny. But then this trend continued where later in the season they were doing on the broadcast some sort of memorial thing to a war veteran who had passed away recently, and while they're doing that on the broadcast, he hits a home run.
Oh my gosh.
And then there was something where, some sort of like military thing happened overseas where they had some attack and he hit a home run earlier that day. It's truly wild. One of the most ridiculous rabbit holes that you can go down is just like important life events on days where Nick Castellanos hit home runs. And it's truly, truly, truly wild. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Luke displays his poorly named sword, as Kronos asked him to do. And Kronos says that this sword, Backbiter, is proof of Luke's oath when he pledged loyalty to him. And Kronos says that Luke wanted power, and he gave it to him. He says that Luke will soon rule the world of gods and mortals. And Kronos asks if he still wants that, and if he still wants to see Olympus destroyed. And Luke confirms that he does want that. And Kronos says that he should then ready the strike force, and as soon as the bargain is done, they shall move forward. My thoughts, what's the strike force? What's the bargain? What's happening here?
So many ominous words used
So
in this.
many scary words. Kronos says first they will attack Camp Half-Blood, then they will attack Olympus. And I'm trying to think here at this point when I was reading, what's the bargain? And it feels like this could be one of those hero trade this for that kind of things, but I'm not exactly sure what this could be. And some of our characters wonder what it could be later, so I don't know what it is, but I just know it's going to be important. So much from
I know.
you.
I can't say it's super important. They're like, oh, no, ignore that. It's okay.
I feel like this does always happen in chapter 5 of Percy Jackson books. I've noticed that at least around that ballpark, we have the chapters where my guest literally will just say, for half of the episode.
The very plot, but ominous plot chapter. Yeah.
Sure. Very much the seeds are planted and you know what plants they grow into. It's like when you play Stardew Valley and you get mixed seeds and you just put them down and you don't know what they're going to grow into until later, but you know what all plants they will turn into.
I do.
So there's a knock on the stateroom door and the coffin light dims and Luke sheaths his sword and he straightens up his clothes and he welcomes in whoever knocked. 2 Dracani enter with Kelly with an eye, not you. Kelly with an eye between them. She's our cheerleading friend with the mismatched legs. She is in a red dress, and she tries to sweet-talk Luke, but he's not having it, and he asks, what's up? She says, oh, you used to be more fun. And he said that things changed when he saw what she did to a boy in Seattle. And as someone whose heart is still partially in Seattle since I lived there for a couple of years, I feel bad for whatever boy this was.
I know, right?
I don't know what happened. But in response to this, Kelly with an eye says, oh, he meant nothing to me, just a snack, really. You know my heart belongs to you, Luke. So very flirtatious, and I don't know. I don't try to agree with Luke on a lot of things, but I feel like his head is in the right space with Kelly with an eye. Luke tells her to basically report what you're here to tell me or beat it. And she says that the advance team, another intense word, the advance team is ready and they can leave. But then before she continues, she stops short and then she frowns. Luke asks her, what's up? And she kind of looks around a little bit and says that she can feel a presence. And then she stares right at Dream Percy, and then her face changes to that of a hag, and she goes full fang and launches at Percy, and that causes him to wake up. So this is the first time we've seen this where So this is the first time we see this. I think Kronos in book 1 at least had times where he could tell Percy was in on the dream, but this is the first time someone else has done it. I wonder if it has to do with her Empusai nature, but it's interesting.
She said something before she pointed out Percy. She said to Luke, your what did she call it? Like your detection skills are lessening. Do you not feel that there's a presence? And Luke was like, what? And then she looks around and sees Percy. So I guess anyone can do it?
Yeah, maybe certain people have more attuned skills.
Right, or it's something you learn maybe, and maybe it's something that monsters are better at.
Yeah.
I don't know. But she did point out that Luke was like dropping the ball by not noticing.
Right, and it could be a thing that comes with age because Kelly had said, I don't remember if it was Kelly or Tammy, one of the Empusai whose name ends with an I and is a cheerleader, one of the two of them said that they hadn't been defeated in 1,000 years. And then Percy had the great comeback where he said, well, you're overdue. So maybe it is an age thing because Kronos is as old as time and Kelly's very old as well.
Yeah, but Luke is young.
Right, which is exactly what I'm saying. That's why
so he's not
as skilled in the, someone's watching me via dream situation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll have to see. It's a good thought, though. So Percy wakes up. Tyson is still asleep. And Percy considers waking up Annabeth to tell her about the dream, but he decides against it. He then sees that the fountain is glowing, but there's no request for payment this time, like the last time we had our collect call, iris message type situation. Very important question. What was your AIM screen name? Or were you? Oh, you weren't an MSN Messenger person, were you?
No. I think I was like Pink Lemonade 13 or something like that. Like I wanted something that didn't have, like I didn't want to be like I don't know. I thought really hard about what it would be. I think that was also my email address was like pinklemonade@consolidated.net. And then it was like, oh, I was Pink Lemon Kelly because they didn't have pink lemonades. I was Pink Lemon Kelly. I don't know why.
I like Pink Lemon Kelly. I had first MJS Dude, which, yes, is my initials followed by Dude. And then when I went into 8th grade and decided I was too cool for MJS Dude, I tried to get Schubes. Schubes was taken. I tried to get Schubes 17, and Schubes 17 was taken, which is the first time that's ever happened to me ever. Schubes gets taken quite often, but Schubes 17 was somehow taken, so I had to have Schubes 1717, and then that was my AOL account and my AIM Instant Messenger account.
I've often wondered why you were Schubes 1717 at AOL.
Because someone took Schubes 17 at AOL, which is wild. So strange to me. I've never had to do anything else to get that anywhere.
Wow.
Which, I don't know.
I guess AOL had been around for a lot longer when you jumped on that train than as opposed to other social medias.
Yeah, I know, but specifically Schubes 17? I don't know, man. Whack to me. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So he doesn't end up telling Annabeth. The fountain is glowing. There's no request for payment. Percy then walks up to the fountain and says, "You're trying to tell me something." He says it to the fountain, gets no response. So instead, he then says, "All right, show me Nico D'Angelo." And I like this move. I think this is good. He's just kind of rolling with the fountain-based punches. But before Percy can even insert a coin, it just shows him Nico. So he doesn't have to insert a drachma this time, which is nice. Narrator Percy notes that it feels like another force besides Iris is controlling it. So I'm thinking, all right, someone clearly is going to be revealed as the person that's been making these messages happen.
I'm going to this because I don't remember.
You don't even have to admit to that. You can just keep going, and people will be like, wow, Kelly's so good at being a guest.
I don't remember how this one ends, but yes.
My two thoughts here were, if we're going by the water, it could be Poseidon. But it feels like Poseidon might let him know. We have Poseidon not necessarily show all his cards all the time, but it feels like he might, say something to Percy because he's given him very helpful 4-word letters in the past. So maybe there would be something. But wasn't a 2-word letter? Didn't it just say be ready or get prepared or whatever? But the other one I would think is that it could be Hades, because I have this harebrained scheme building in my head that Hades is going to become a secret good guy in the story, and he's doing little stuff. So Hades could be trying to send messages so that Percy can check up on Nico. So that's the one I feel better about. But this is all predicated on Hades actually being a secret good guy. But the more stuff we learn about Hades, weirdly, he seems like he might be, because with Nico and Bianca, he didn't actually break the vow, and maybe he was keeping them safe so that they would turn past the age, so that they wouldn't be part of the prophecy. It could be really cool. But also I could just look very silly right now or sound very silly if you're listening to the podcast after the fact.
I legitimately don't remember, but I don't want to throw out any other suggestions in case it's my subconscious remembering what it is.
Yes, don't do that, because then someone will be like, no, she ruined it. Yeah, better safe than spoiler, I always say. So Nico appears. He is no longer in the underworld, though. Instead, he's in a graveyard at night with willow trees all around him. And this spooky thing made me think of something that happened when we were in Australia. We did a Great Barrier Reef thing, and we took a small little boat over to this island where we got to see turtles hatching, or not, we saw turtles laying their eggs, and it was so cool. We were with this turtle specialist who helped us to make sure that we were crawling on the ground and keeping our distance and making sure we weren't disrupting anything. He had red light flashlights. It was awesome. But when we were waiting for more of the people to come across in the little boat that sat 3 people, 4 people max, we walked through these trees. I forget the name of the trees, and I forget the name of the birds.
The birds were those the shearwaters?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the birds are shearwaters. Do you guys have those down here? Okay. They're these birds that the sound that they make, and I put this at the end of an episode of the Newest Olympian, so if you listen to the ASMR mic segment, you will have heard this. But there are these birds that make this groaning noise that legitimately sounds like people either imitating ghosts or imitating the wind, where, no joke, these birds sound like, and what it is these birds burrow like underground to sleep for the night, but they do it in pairs with their mates. So they call out to whoever their mate is. So them going, oh, is them basically being like, Rebecca! Rebecca! So they make this noise, but there's loads of these birds. So we're in this forest and you just hear all around you, and I imagine that going on here. Now, when you think that's scary enough, it gets scarier because the trees in this forest, I forget the name of the tree. Do you have something to add?
So the other thing about the shearwaters, though, that I thought was super interesting was they spend the majority of their life flying and they don't know how to walk. They're really bad at walking. So they just plop anywhere, and that's why they're yelling for so long, because it takes the other one long enough to like scoot over to them because they can't walk very well. So we were like walking down the path and the guy like turns on his red light and there's one just like in the middle of the path, he's going, ooh.
But then the trees here, I forget the official name of the tree, but I do remember the name that we gave the tree, which was murder trees.
Murder trees.
Because the way that these trees work is they have this sap that they have and they emit out of their branches and stuff, or the leaves, and it gets caught in these birds' wings so that they fall down and then they die, and then their bird carcasses fertilize the tree. So it's like the scariest, weirdest circle of life situation.
Yeah.
So we're in the murder tree forest with the birds going, and it's pitch black. It was creepy, but also hilarious at the same time.
It was cool because it's a sand-based island, so there's no like soil nutrients for the trees. So the way they get their nutrients is by killing the birds.
Yes.
But there's also like thousands of birds in the trees, so they're also doing like kind of fine, and they need the trees, but then also the trees need to kill them to survive. It was super weird.
And that's been Nature Corner with Mike and Kelly.
I'm very excited. I've been told here there's far fewer things that can kill me.
Yes, we were advertised, New Zealand was advertised to us by someone at the Melbourne show as the more luscious version with less scary / less deadly animals and cuter accents version of Australia.
So far, a great advertisement.
Everything's been
I love
great.
it.
So Nico appears. I'm imagining all of these shearwaters are around him going, boo. He is here in this graveyard, and he is watching grave diggers living up to their name, digging graves. And he's wearing a black cloak, and he has a big Walmart bag by his feet. Weird that Walmart got the name brand mention here. He asks if it's deep enough yet, and if it's deep enough yet, and the same ghost from before says almost, but this ghost also adds that it's unnecessary because Nico has him for guidance, which was confusing to me at the time and then made sense in a couple of paragraphs. Nico yells that he wants a second opinion, and he snaps his fingers, and the two diggers stop, and it turns out that these grave diggers were actually skeletons in ragged clothes. Nico dismisses them, and they collapse into a pile of bones, which is quite the exit to make. He thanks them, and that makes the ghost angry. He makes some sort of snide comment about it. I really dislike this ghost so much. I can't wait to learn who he is so that I can properly smack talk him, because I really don't like this guy.
If anybody is telling you not to get a second opinion, I would say don't trust that person.
Or if anyone is telling you not to thank people.
Yeah, that too.
Nico pulls out a 12-pack of Coke out of the Walmart bag, but rather than drink it, he pours it into the grave. And then he says, "Let the dead taste again. Let them rise and take this offering. Let them remember." And I wrote, my guy, this is Coca-Cola. Come on. We're not talking about Bundaberg ginger beer here. So he drops the rest of the Cokes in. He pulls out a Happy Meal bag, and I thought, oh, okay. The chapter title. I hadn't pegged this as how that would be revealed. He dumps in the fries and the burger into the grave, and the ghost has some other smarmy comment this time about how back in his day, they used animal blood, which worked well enough. I don't know. I really don't like this ghost at all. So Nico says that he wants to treat them with respect, and I'm wondering how giving them Coca-Cola and a bunch of Happy Meals is respect.
As an offering instead of animal blood? Seems nice.
I guess, or I don't know, at least give them like Big Macs or Quarter Pounders with cheese or whatever metric version of the Quarter Pounder with cheese you guys have down here.
You got to remember, too, he's a kid. The epitome of great food is Happy Meals and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, but you do it for the toy, not the food. Now, speaking of the toy, the ghost asks, can he at least keep the toy? And Nico says, be silent. So Nico puts another 12-pack of soda and 3 more Happy Meals into the grave and starts chanting in ancient Greek. Narrator Percy then says, quote, I only caught some of the words, a lot about the dead and memories and returning from the grave. Real happy stuff, which is just such a New York turn of phrase. I really love it. New Yorker true and true. The liquid in the grave then starts to bubble and to rise, and then dozens of bluish humanoid figures appear throughout the cemetery. At first I thought they were coming up through this, but they are around the cemetery. And the ghost companion is worried that Nico summoned too many and that he doesn't know his own strength. And Nico unconvincingly says that he has it under control, but Percy can hear in his voice that he's not feeling so sure about it. Nico draws his sword, which has a short blade made of black metal. It's not bronze, but Percy isn't sure what it is. He guesses that it might be iron, which makes me feel like it's not iron. But I don't know what it is. I don't know metals well enough to know what a black metal could be. My only thought was something like obsidian, but I don't think that counts as metal. I think that's a rock. So I have no idea what this could be.
I know what it is.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I feel like I only know obsidian because that might have been something that you could have in RuneScape, the video game I played in middle school. I feel like that was the strongest one, but I'm not positive. Anyway, the crowd of bluish figures retreat at the sight of it, so we at least know that it's scary. Nico orders them to approach the bubbling grave one at a time, and one comes up and drinks from it and then eats some fries from it, and then Percy can see this figure more clearly. It's a teenager in Greek armor with curly hair, green eyes, and a seashell clasp on his cloak. Nico asks this person who they are, and the teen replies that he is Theseus. Now, I would love to talk to Dr. Moya more about the actual Theseus story, because the only Theseus story that I know is from Hades the video game, where Theseus is great. We've talked about him on the pod, but he's just a huge jerk, and he talks a lot of trash, and he's just the most perfectly hateable character. Like, he is designed to make you hate him, and it is perfect gaming character design because he is so infinitely hateable. Love him. Honestly, I think my favorite character in the game because of how much I despise him. He is crafted so, he is just the most pompous jerk ever. And every time he's on the screen, you're like, oh, I want to kill this guy so bad. And that's the point, because he's one of the boss battles. And then you get to kill him. And then when you defeat him, you feel so happy because you hate this dude so much. It's great. Very different Theseus we get here in the book.
Very different.
He seems like a nice guy, which was very strange for me to experience as a big-time Theseus hater, since I think I've cleared Hades like 150 plus times. So 150 times I've very angrily been like, I gotta kill this dude, and then I get very happy when I do. Narrator Percy then says, no way, I thought. This couldn't be the, in italics, Theseus. He was just a kid. I'd grown up hearing stories about him fighting the Minotaur and stuff, but I'd always pictured him as this huge buff guy, which is exactly what he is in Hades video game. He is ripped. The ghost I was looking at wasn't strong or tall, and he wasn't any older than I was. So that makes me want to know what the real myth is about. Was he a teenager whenever he went into the labyrinth and all that? I have no idea.
Well, all the demigods are very young, and we learned that most of them don't live very long. So it makes sense that, you know, this famous demigod was also rather young.
Yeah, that would definitely make sense. Nico asks him how he can get Bianca back. Theseus looks spooked, and he warns him not to try because it's madness. Nico demands that he tells him. Oh, wait, I want to make a cool, sick joke. Anyway, this is why I come to the show. Theseus looks spooked. Theseus looks spooked and warns him not to try it because it's madness. But then Nico says, madness? This is Sparta! And kicks him into the bubbling grave. No, he doesn't do that. Nico demands that he tells him. Theseus explains that his stepfather threw himself into the sea because he thought Theseus died in the labyrinth. And Theseus tried to bring him back from the dead, but was unsuccessful in doing so. You have something to add? Or okay. Nico's ghost companion nudges him to ask.
Well,
oh,
I was
okay.
thinking, if we're going,
you sat up and moved your microphone close to your mouth. The universal sign for hello. I would like to say something, please.
If we're going back to add in unnecessary jokes that we
Bring
thought
it
of
in,
later.
Let's go.
You said the Theseus. You mean Theseus?
Yes, I do. I do indeed. I do.
Went
indeed.
back for that one.
Worth
Nice.
it. Nico's ghost companion nudges him to ask about the soul exchange, and Theseus is fixated on the ghost's voice. is fixated on the ghost's voice, saying that he recognizes it. And this is definitely something where if I knew something about the actual Theseus story, I feel like I would have a clue as to who the ghost is. But because I don't, which is fine. But maybe some big Greek stands out there are like, oh yeah, dude, I totally know who this is. Whoosh, way over my head. Lost my place in my notes. Cool beans. This is why I come to the live show. Nico asks Theseus if his quest into the labyrinth will bring her back. And Theseus says that the only thing that helped him through the labyrinth was the love of a mortal girl. He notes that the string was only part of the answer, and he says it was the princess who guided him. I know the string is Ariadne's string. I don't think she was a princess, though. Maybe she's the same person. Maybe there's a different princess. This is very much in the I'm sure I'll learn about it later category, but they're talking in vague semi-sentences that I could maybe kind of understand, but not enough. So the companion ghost tells Nico that this is all unnecessary. He will guide him through, and he again implores Nico to ask Theseus about the soul exchange. Nico asks if a soul for a soul truly works. Theseus hesitates, and he begins to confirm, but he tries to immediately warn against it, and the ghost orders Theseus to simply answer the question. The other ghosts begin to stir. Nico yells that he wants to see his sister. Theseus says he is coming. He has sensed your summons. He comes. Nico asks who, and Theseus says he comes to find the source of this power. You must release us. And I don't know who this is. Maybe this is the Lord of Time who was mentioned earlier, but I still feel like that's Kronos. I don't know who scary evil person is, and you can't tell me. Narrator Percy says that the water in the fountain begins to hum with power and it starts to tremble. And then Percy realizes that the entire cabin is shaking. The noise gets louder. The image of this vision glows too brightly, and Percy shouts for the call to end. But it doesn't exactly work because the fountain begins to crack, and then purple light throws ghostly shadows onto the walls as if the specters are trying to escape into the cabin. So Percy just instinctively uncaps Riptide and then slashes at the fountain, and it breaks into two pieces. Water gets everywhere. The fountain then falls and smashes into even more pieces, and then Percy just slumps to the ground and shivers based on what he saw. And I don't know if what he revealed to us was the full story, and that in and of itself was scary enough, or if it's one of those like Percy saw something scarier but didn't even give us the full picture as the narrator sort of deals.
Well, or usually when these dreams or calls or something happens, you're safely away from it. Even if it feels very real, you're safely away from it. And it felt like it was coming out of the fountain. It was coming into his life, which I can imagine is a pretty scary moment. And also it's a whole bunch of the dead or the undead like swirling around, and I imagine it's a very intense moment. That would scare me. Tyson just sleeps through the whole thing, but
power to Tyson.
Yeah,
we all aspire to be as deep of a sleeper as Tyson.
You're pretty close, but
I am close. I am a pretty deep sleeper. I appreciate it. Now the next morning, Tyson finds Percy there, still staring at the fountain rubble. Clearly didn't get good night's sleep. Later that morning, the quest group meets outside of Zeus's fist. Percy's bag is packed. He's got a thermos full of nectar, a bag of ambrosia, a bedroll, rope, extra clothes, Zeus's power bolt, just kidding, flashlights, and a load full, and a bunch of extra batteries. And I am very excited that Percy, for once, has brought a well-packed backpack onto the quest. I guess the only other time this happened is when Hermes packed his bag for him. So the fact that Percy did his own packing and did a good job makes me very happy.
He's learning, at least.
He is learning. Just like me, I used to be a very bad packer. I'm a much better packer, mainly in that I do it more than 30 minutes before I need to leave for the airport.
That certainly helps when packing.
Growth. Now, Percy is also bringing Riptide in his pocket and his Tyson Shield wristwatch. Juniper and Grover are not fully with the group. Juniper is crying, but she's trying to keep it together. And at this point, I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't be so suspicious of her, but I don't know. She's fussing with Grover's clothes, including his Rasta cap, which I really hoped was no longer canonically a Rasta cap, but it still is. And he's in his human disguise because they're unsure of what lies ahead. So he's got his fake feet and all that going on. Chiron, Quintus, and Mrs. O'Leary are there, as well as a bunch of other campers to wish them goodbye. But it's not your typical, normal, happy send-off because there's a lot of commotion going around. Beckendorf and all of his cabin mates are beginning to build defenses around the entrance/exit in Zeus's fist. So it's not necessarily a cool scene because they are worried about what could happen here.
Right. They're preparing for the chance that something could come out of the labyrinth that way.
Right. And that's not what you want to have to prepare for, just in case the most evil being comes through and tries to fight us. Annabeth is doing a final check on her bag when Percy and Tyson approach. She tells Percy that he looks terrible, which is a thing that no one should ever do. I hate this so much. You know how when you feel really bad because you didn't get a lot of sleep and then someone says, "You look rough," and that makes you feel so much better? I hate that. I hate that so much. I'm such an anti-proponent of people saying, "Oh, you look really tired." Yeah, I know. I am tired. That's why I look tired.
I don't mind it as much as you do, as long as it's said by the right person in the right context. If it's meant as a show of concern,
right?
Then
I feel like family members and significant others can do it. Not my friend. I'm thinking of one friend of mine in high school who used to say it, and he would be like, "Wow, Mike, you look really tired." Yes, because I was up late doing the homework. Unnamed friend who I'm not going to put on blast on the podcast because I like him a lot. Annabeth is, nope, that's not what I want. Okay. So Annabeth says that Percy looks terrible. Tyson in response says, quote, "He killed the water fountain last night."
Nice.
Stellar. Annabeth is confused. Percy wants to explain, but enter Chiron, who wants to make sure that this explanation happens later down the road. He needs this plot to be in a particular order, and Percy can't reveal exactly what happened just yet. Shout out to Chiron. Always there for the plot. Now, Percy can tell that Chiron is trying to sound a bit more positive about them being ready to go, but Percy can tell that it's not 100% sincere. Mm-hmm. Percy doesn't want to scare him further, but he asks for a favor while he's gone. Chiron agrees, so Percy takes him aside so it's just them solo talking. And Percy tells Chiron about his dream, about Luke and Kronos. Chiron says that he's worried because against his father Kronos, they don't stand a chance. And narrator Percy picks up on the very distinct wording of his father Kronos, saying Chiron rarely called Kronos his father. I mean, we all knew it was true. Everybody in the Greek world, god, monster, or titan, was related to one another somehow, but it wasn't exactly something Chiron liked to brag about. "Oh, my dad is the all-powerful evil titan lord who wants to destroy Western civilization. I want to be just like him when I grow up." What a great description. What a great description.
Well, of course, Chiron mentioned it as part of the plot because Chiron's always on the plot. And he wants to make sure that you remember this thing that we learned in the last book.
Hey, did you forget what happened in book 1? Or did you somehow skip books 1 through 3? Hello. Yeah, stepping in, helping out the reader. Percy asks Chiron if he knows what they meant by the bargain, and I'm very excited. I love when Percy asks the questions that I've asked a couple lines up in my notes. Chiron says that he's not sure, but his instinct is that they want to make a deal with Daedalus, which is very interesting. He says that if he is alive and he has his wits about him, Kronos has a chance to bend him to his liking since he can do that to anyone. And Percy clarifies, not everyone, citing book 1 Percy being able to hold up against him. Mm-hmm. What a supreme brag from Percy to say the evil Titan Lord could not get me. And Chiron agrees with this awesome brag. He gives him a little bit of a smile, but then he gets serious with Percy, saying that he fears Kronos might be after Daedalus for another reason. He calls back to when Luke said that they were going to make Kronos a new body, worthy of the forges of Hephaestus. And Chiron says, indeed, Daedalus was the world's greatest inventor. He created the Labyrinth, but much more. Automatons, thinking machines. What if Kronos wishes Daedalus to make him a new form? And now I'm really worried, not only at the potential of Kronos coming back, but Kronos coming back as like a giant evil robot? Ugh, let me just get the heck out of here. That sounds awful. Narrator Percy agrees with me, saying that was a real pleasant thought. And honestly, all I can think of at this point in time is the giant mechanical spider from Wild Wild West, starring Will Smith. Imagine if that was Kronos. I mean, there is a bit of a reason. We saw Hephaestus's mechanical spider type things in book 1, so maybe giant evil spider. I don't know. That's all I can think of.
I'm trying to think of like other pop culture giant robots that you could
There's the Iron Giant, but he was all nice and stuff.
Okay, mean robots. I can only think of like Godzilla and King Kong, which aren't robots.
Yeah, you got Megatron from Transformers. He's a big evil robot.
Okay, could be Megatron then.
Yeah, hey, that could be on brand. Percy says that they have to get to Daedalus to make sure that he doesn't do that. Chiron says that he's also worried about the whole one last soul to join their cause business. And Percy stays silent, but he begins to feel guilty, as he should, about not revealing the whole Nico situation to Chiron. And I really just want Percy to tell Chiron because I feel like Chiron could help here, and it's very frustrating.
Well, he says the reason he doesn't tell him is because he thinks Chiron can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah, but at least then Chiron would know. It's one of those things where I get Percy's explanation of he is afraid that Chiron will have to tell other people, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But I just feel like if the true worst case scenario is Chiron can't do anything, what about the small chance that Chiron could do something or at least give Percy advice about how to handle the situation?
I agreed with you at the because you've had this gripe as long as he's been keeping this secret. And I agreed with you initially, but I'm starting to see Percy's side on this because Chiron's bosses are the gods, right? And so if he's told this information and he has to share it, there are many gods who would want to kill Nico or bring up the whole pact again about Hades. So I kind of see why, like, saving Chiron from being in that awkward middle spot of not having to, rat on him.
Maybe there needs to be some sort of either temporary thing or a different person at Camp Half-Blood where they can have like patient-client confidentiality.
Like a therapist.
Right. Where you can tell like, hey, I'm going to say this. You can't tell the gods and stuff, but like, let me just vibe check something real quick. Nico's dad is Hades. Should we be worried? Can I keep this a secret? But Percy then tells Chiron what Juniper told him, Percy is worried that Kronos knows about Nico, but he internally doubles down on wanting to keep it secret and handle this himself. Percy does tell Chiron what Juniper told him about Quintus, and Chiron says that it doesn't surprise him, but that surprises Percy. Chiron explains that when Quintus showed up to camp offering his services, he was a bit suspicious, as he should be. Percy very logically asks why Chiron let him in then, and Chiron goes full Dumbledore and says, quote, because sometimes it is better to have someone you mistrust close to you so that you can keep an eye on him. He may be just what he says, a half-blood in search of a home. Certainly he has done nothing openly that would make me question his loyalty, but believe me, I will keep an eye. And before he can finish his sentence, Annabeth interrupts to ask Percy if he's ready to go. And Annabeth, the student, has become the master, not letting Chiron reveal too much of the plot. Percy confirms, and then he feels the ice whistle in his pocket. He looks to Quintus, who gives him a wave of goodbye, and Percy thinks to Luke, saying, our spies report success, and how they knew about the quest once it was put into motion. But I just feel like they're being too heavy-handed with Quintus for it to be Quintus, but I don't know that I'm all in on Jupiter, but I don't know that I'm all ready to go all in on, but I don't know that I'm ready to go all in on Juniper. I mean, but it's hard because she did mention liking Luke, and she had her reasons for not telling people about the cave because she didn't think the cave was important. Is that entering doth protest too much territory? Am I overthinking it? Am I underthinking it? Am I exactly correctly thinking it? I don't like Juniper. I really don't. And maybe she's just a perfectly fine nymph, but I don't know. Chiron tells Percy to take care, and he wishes him good hunting. Percy wishes him the same, and then he heads over to the rock by Grover and Tyson, and he stares at the crack in the rocks. And Grover says, well, goodbye, sunshine. And Tyson says, hello, rocks.
Nice.
Narrator Percy then says, and together, the four of us descended into darkness. And that is going to hit so hard when that's an episode of the TV show. I am very excited for it. And that is the end of chapter 5. And that is the end of this portion of the live show, as well as the episode of the Newest Olympian. But both at the live show and on the podcast after the fact, we will be doing a Q&A in Act 2. But for now, everyone, give it up to Kelly for being a wonderful guest here for TNO. And for the purposes of being here in the live show and then also for the audio later, let's do the Percy Jackson sign-off here. So, though I will be seeing you all very soon, just for posterity of the audio and all of that, until we meet again to figure out what's going on inside of the labyrinth. I'll pursue you later. Now, let's talk about intermission, which is coming up right now, baby. So, intermission, we're going to take about like a 15-minute break or so where you can do whatever you're looking for. You can, you powder your nose in the facilities. You can get a drink at the bar or whatever. Or you can visit Kelly at the merch table. Hey-o! We've got a whole bunch of fun merch out there. We've got signed posters, which are designed by Sarah Barra and signed by me in a golden celestial bronze Sharpie. We've also got TNO pins. We've got Potterless pins. We have Potterless stickers. Did we sell out of Potterless buttons, or do you still have a couple of the buttons
There's
left?
a couple of those.
Still got some Potterless buttons, so you can check out all the merch there. And you can also talk to Kelly, which is a fun $0 add-on for going to the merch table. Pretty fun. So you can check that out. The other thing you can do during intermission, we're going to end the show with Q&A. So if you have a question for me or Kelly or both of us, whether it's about Percy Jackson or Harry Potter or nothing, you can send an email to potterlesspodcast@gmail.com and then put something in the subject line to make it clear that you're here at the New Zealand show. The one request that I do have is, because this is very early into our time in New Zealand, we want to know what food and snacks we should be on the prowl for. So we love to go to grocery stores and just get like all the classic staples, local snacks and all of that. So we had our fair share of Tim Tams and Milo and all that in Australia.
And now we want
whatever New
Lambus
Zealand
bread,
is. So
whatever
in
y'all eat
addition
here.
to any question, you can also put in your food recommendation, and then we'll read that off with the question. And then by crowd, noises, we'll know what's worth buying or not buying. So you can do that, but we'll be back in like 15 minutes or so after a brief intermission as we do Act 2, Potterless and Q&A. But see you all in a little bit.